Welcome back. This is a Celtic State of Mind and Celtic Down Under's match day coverage. I'm Paul John Dykes and I'm delighted today to be joined by Liam Carrigan and Jared Hill for the Dundee United match. Gentlemen, tell me where you are and what time it is in your destination.
Let you go first, Liam.
All right, I am in Nagano, Japan. It is now 7:30. And I've literally just got in the door, so I'm a wee bit windswept and interesting. Sorry about that.
Nice Billy Connolly reference there. Love that.
It's all your luscious locks, Liam. Yeah, I'm over in...
what's left of them?
I'm over here in Melbourne, Australia. Angie's hometown. Got to love it. It's 8:30 at night, hanging out for the game.
Superb. I mean, obviously here it's an early kick-off. It's a Sunday. We are looking at a situation where we're sitting second, virtue of Rangers playing yesterday and getting a win. We might touch on some of that. But let's have a wee look at the actual team lines first and foremost. And we'll start off with Celtic. If I can bring this up, we'll have a wee discussion about what you think about some of the changes that have been made in the Celtic side. So here we go. So we're starting with Hart, Juranovic, Katovic, Starfelt and Taylor, McGregor, O'Reilly and Hatate, and up top Abada, Jota and Kyogo. So let's have a wee chat about that then, because there's obviously been 3 changes made since the 2-0 defeat of Hearts. I also noticed that Big Giakoumakis isn't in the starting lineup or on the bench. Was there an update during the week that I've missed on Giakoumakis?
I was just doing the check, Paul, to see if there was anything, because I've heard nothing as well, but some people in the comments are saying that he's ill, so I'm hoping that's what it is and there's not an injury or a transfer going on. But yeah,
I know, because we're at that stage where all summer we've been saying on Axom that we're not going to sell any of our big assets, so you do get a wee bit of a moment of anxiety if someone like Giakoumakis was to drop out of the squad. But let's just hope it is something that's keeping an eye, a wee bit like illness, etc. I'm going to come to yourself first, Jared. With these changes, we'll start off with Starfelt coming in for Jens. What's your thoughts on that? Are we looking ahead to the 2 big games? I know today's important, but we've got 2 massive games coming up as well.
I think it makes sense at the end of the day. Like last year, the best defence in the league was Carter Vickers and Starfelt together as centre-back pairing. So I know Starfelt had an injury interrupted pre-season. He's only been coming off the bench a bit. He started, I think, 1 game overall, if my memory's right. But it's good to see him back in there alongside Carter Vickers, get some minutes into his legs, whether we can get him that 70, 80, 90 minutes into him. But it's good to have an option with Jens coming off the bench there if need be. And I think, yeah, you're right, with leading into like Real Madrid in a couple of weeks, Rangers in a couple of weeks, makes sense to try and get that a couple of minutes into the legs of that centre-back pairing that did so well for us previously.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Liam, when you think about what Jared's saying there, going into these big games, and I know I'm not taking for granted we've got Dundee United and Ross County before we play Rangers, and you think to yourself, well, let's make sure that both of those partnerships have got minutes in their legs. So we've seen Jens and Carter Vickers teaming up pretty well since Jens came in, but also we know that there is a really good relationship between Starfelt and Carter Vickers. Is it a case of going into that Rangers game knowing that no matter what happens you can put either of the 2 partnerships in and you can be confident with them?
Yeah, I think it's just a case of conditioning and getting players ready to play their part whenever they're called upon. Because, you know, I was talking to Laura about this on Friday, on a Friday show. The squad is going to be the big issue for us in the next couple of months, with cup games, European games and league games coming thick and fast. We need to have everybody ready to go. And so I think today is about sharpness for Starfelt, for Abada, and also for Hatate, who's still coming back off of an injury. So. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, Jared will digress a little bit just to talk about the fact that on a match day this season we will be teaming up with you guys, even if due to the times etc any of your contributors are unable to be on the show. This is a Celtic State of Mind and Celtic Down Under going out on the match days. It's superb to be sitting here in Scotland with someone representing Australia, someone else representing Japan. We've also obviously got Ange Postecoglou and our 4 Japanese players to think about, so you get a real insight. But for anyone who's not aware of your show, Jared, give us a wee rundown of where to find you, how long you've been going, and just bring us up to date with Celtic Down Under.
Yeah, so started the Celtic Down Under podcast, I think it was about 3 years ago now. Basically, we have a weekly podcast, comes out pretty much every Wednesday, around about 10:30 Scotland time at the moment. But when the time zones change, it happens. But yeah, we go live on our Twitter, on our YouTube channel, and also on our Facebook page. You can find us on Celtic Down Under Facebook as a group and a page. You can also get us on Instagram or Twitter at Celtic Down. Yeah, it's funny you say that there's the three of us from different countries covering our fans because, yeah, like Liam got involved, would have been about second year of the podcast starting up. So he's been involved coming up on 2 years now in Japan. So he was involved even before Ange was at the club. So it's funny that we've always had that Australia, Japanese link up there where we're thinking, hey, we've got a guy in Perth, we've got a guy in Brisbane, we've got me in Melbourne, and then you got that link in with Ange. It's just we've seen some substantial growth recently due to the Ange link, but long may it continue. Ange is doing well, and I just want to see our podcast keep growing, and it's great to be involved with a Celtic State of Mind.
No, it is. It's incredible how that's all worked out for you guys, and hopefully it will continue for the next few years. Obviously, we have collaborated before with the Axom Charity Weekender. We will have another Weekender in December. We have been planning actually for a long time to make it a little bit different this time round, so I'm looking forward to that. And also, when I look at this journey that Ange has been on, we've spoken a lot about this Real Madrid thing because of the Puskas link with Ange, and lo and behold, we draw Real Madrid, and it's almost as if it was written in the stars. I think everybody will be scrambling about for tickets because it's going to be tough to get, certainly away tickets for the game at the Bernabeu. We'll move into the midfield before we start bringing up some of the comments here, and of course, already mentioned by Liam, Hatate returns to the scene. I think looking on paper, of course, McGregor, O'Reilly and Hatate is certainly my first choice midfield trio. Liam, what does Hatate give you that maybe David Turnbull didn't, or what does he give you that's different from David Turnbull?
I think he gives maybe a little bit more flair and a little bit more pace. Now, that's not to say that David Turnbull isn't a highly skillful player who has a good pace about him as well, but I just think Turnbull is more for a bit of dig in the midfield, and Hatate's more for a bit of flair. And it's really about which do you want, because I think they both offer quite a lot to the team. It's just on a game-by-game basis, what do we need? And I think Hatate is better suited to today's game.
We've spoken quite a bit actually over the last few weeks about both players, Hatate and Turnbull, because I was pretty impressed with Turnbull during the pre-season. And obviously he dropped out of the side due to injury, and up to that point, the League Cup final, he had been more or less a first choice for Ange Postecoglou. So I do feel a bit for him, but when you've got a player coming in January and hitting the ground running as Hatate undoubtedly did, and then you look at him and you think, he does look as though he's trimmed over the pre-season. He's obviously done some kind of conditioning. He's spoken about the fact he needed that rest, which he's now got. And I look at this, and I've been hearing a lot of the comments saying we don't have a starting 11 because obviously we will adapt depending on the opposition. But everybody has a strongest 11 in their mind, I think, Jared. And when I look at that midfield today, I do feel this is the strongest one. But where does it leave Turnbull? Is he going to get enough game time to satisfy him this season, do you think?
I actually said towards, I think it was 2 weeks before Tom Rogic was announced as leaving, that I couldn't see both Rogic and Turnbull still being at the club this season. And it turned out that way with Rogic leaving. And it's not because Turnbull's not a good player. For me, he, as you said, until we got those new guys in January last year, he was one of the first names on the team sheet. So he's a quality player. The issue I see with him is that the pace Ange wants to play at, Turnbull is a step slower than the rest of the guys. Like O'Reilly, Hatate, they're a bit more athletic than Turnbull is. Even if he's got in shape or whatever, Turnbull, for me, sometimes he goes through a patch, 5-minute burst here, a 10-minute burst there where he gets the ball, and instead of one touch pass, he'll get it, he'll take a touch to gather, he'll then try to dribble past someone, then he'll pass it backwards or he'll put it out to a wing, then he'll come back to him and he'll slow it down again. And in the position he plays in, the number 10 role, that's not really what Ange wants.
That's really interesting, because I think around about the time when Ange came in, there was some discussion around whether or not David Turnbull would suit this style, and obviously you're talking about the number 10 that Ange wants. I really do rate him very, very highly, David Turnbull, and I hope there is a place for him in the Celtic squad, certainly. But he does drop to the bench today. And up top, Abada, Jota and Kyogo. I gave my predicted 11 for the Hearts game, and I had Abada starting. A lot of people disagreed with that. He does start today. Do you think this is a similar kind of set up, Liam, to the defensive scenario where we want to get minutes in Abada's legs? He's not started games this season. We want to make sure he's as ready as Maeda when we go into these big games that are coming up.
Yeah, I think that's it exactly. Because I do think, we talked about our strongest midfield. I think our strongest forward line has Maeda ahead of Abada. Just my personal opinion. And so I think, it's about getting Abada up to speed, because he hasn't really played that much this season. And I think he will also be a starter in the cup game in midweek as well.
It is interesting, because I think even if you were to look at Abada's performances at Tannadice, and I know it is all about form, but certain players just like playing at certain grounds or against certain teams, and I always think Abada does pretty well against Dundee United, both home and away, so it'll be interesting to see how he kicks on today. What's your thoughts, Jared? I mean, I know Liam's a massive fan of Maeda. What's your thoughts, Jared? Would you subscribe to the fact that maybe Abada does deserve a run out? I mean, he's done so well in his debut season, but we haven't seen him starting yet until today.
I'm a massive Abada fan, almost to the same level Liam is a Maeda fan, but I just like his directness. And against a team like Dundee United, I think it's the perfect game for Abada to come on and to give Jota back that position on the left wing, because knowing a few of the players, i.e. Aziz Bayic, who's an Australian who's at Dundee United, he likes to bomb on as a left back, or I think he's a left back. So that opens up the space for these guys being so direct and quick and technical to get in behind him. So it works pretty well for me. So I think this makes sense. Maeda got one hell of a motor on him. I don't think he obviously needs a rest, but we've spoken about on our podcast a few times, Liam, that it's a squad game, and we've said you're going to have 17, 18, 19 players rotating, and it doesn't matter who starts, because the Brendan Rodgers-Claxton's coming in here, but he said it doesn't matter who starts or who finishes. You can have a team for both. And Ange's team's gone a step further than that, because it's, all right, if we take out Giakoumakis, we've got Kyogo. If we take out Maeda, Abada comes in. We're not losing anything in terms of skill or depth, because they're still in the overall squad. So it's a squad game for us this season, because we're going to keep competing on multiple fronts.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want to compete on all of those fronts. I mean, the team that finishes the game today may include any of the following: Siegrist, Jens, Moy, Turnbull, McCarthy, Bernabe, Maeda, Forrest and Ralston. Some of those players we haven't seen a great deal of. Bernabe, of course, we haven't seen playing in a competitive game yet. Moy created a lot of discussion on the Celtic Twitter and social media accounts, as well as on the podcast. I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen so far. Liam, what's your thoughts on Aaron Moy? I mean, I don't know if it was because he was a free transfer, because we had lost Beaton and Rogic. He wasn't maybe deemed a marquee signing. I think he's been a solid signing so far.
Yeah, I think every time I've seen him, he's not put a foot wrong. It's one of those kind of slightly thankless roles, that kind of midfield, the kind of central midfielder, because if he has a bad game, you really notice it. But by the same token, they can have a great game and you don't see them. I remember back in the day, people used to say that about Paul Lambert. Paul Lambert, you knew he'd had a good game when you didn't actually remember him doing anything, because he was just doing all the simple things well. And but Moy is a bit more attacking than Lambert, obviously. And I think also there's a different element to it, in that he's an older head. If you look at the profile of the players we're signed, you know, Hatate, Maeda, Abada, all under 25. Kyogo's only 26. You know, he's that slightly older head who's just going to bring a bit of experience as well. And I think that's maybe one area where Celtic are still a wee bit lacking. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
Definitely. And I think, you know, yourself, Jared, you're not a massive fan of Moy, are you? I mean, sometimes you expect those in Australia just to just say, yeah, great signing. But you're not a massive fan of him. But do you think the signing was shrewd by Postecoglou? He's a player who we're getting without a fee. Postecoglou knows him well. He has some elements to his game that we maybe lost with Beaton and Rogic. We haven't seen much offensively from Moy yet. But despite the fact that you're not a massive fan, have you been pretty impressed with the fleeting appearances we've seen so far?
He's what's expected from him. Like, he's played in the Premier League down in England. He's played at World Cups. He's not some young kid coming through the academy. He's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. So the reason I'm not a massive fan is because of what I've seen. But he does tick those boxes in that he's kind of like an amalgamation of what we've lost with Biton and also what we've lost with Rogic, in terms of he can play both as a 10 and as a 6. He's got the long range passing that Biton used to look for, but he's also good in the little, if you get him in the pockets, which Rogic was. So he can, all the skills and all that, he ticks those boxes. And if we were to buy him from somewhere down south, we'd be looking at probably £5-6 million for him easy. To get that for free, it's a bonus. So he does tick a lot of the boxes. My main issue with him, as I said previously, was this time last year I felt the same uneasiness for Moy that I felt for Joe Hart, because I wasn't sure how he was going to fit in at the club. Completely changed on Hart. I'm hoping that Moy does the same thing for me.
Yeah, that would be good. And I've got loads of comments coming through. It's always a pleasure to see the names coming up on the comments field. We are broadcasting from Scotland, Japan and Australia on the same stream. You can catch us on the YouTube channel of Axom and also on the Twitter stream of Celtic Down Under. We'll start off with Elfin Priest, who comes in to say, hope Giakoumakis and Welsh's illnesses clear up ASAP. Sometimes with the illness, you think to yourself, especially now this season, it could still be the Lurgy that was obviously affecting a lot of players last season. Ridiculizer, Barcelona, Real Madrid, who the hell are you trying to kid? We're off to show the world what we can do. Let's hope so, Ridiculizer. I've seen loads of positivity coming in since that draw. And yeah, very much looking forward to that particular tie. And Magnet 67, morning Axon team, big game today. Need to get back on top of the league and keep the pressure on the new club as well. Obviously, yesterday we don't want to labour too much on the challengers. However, yesterday's decision, Malky Mackay spoke out about it, Liam, before we look at the Dundee United team. It was a shocker, an absolute shocker, once again.
Yeah, I mean, I watched that whole game last night because there wasn't really anything else on the telly. But as it turns out, you know, it's a game at Ibrox. They get a dodgy decision in their favour. It's kind of par for the course. I noticed all the same people who were squealing for VAR last week got a wee bit silent this morning. Kind of unusual, that, isn't it? I wonder why.
Absolutely. Jared, again, you know, it's one of these things on Axom that we don't focus. We really don't focus on anyone other than Celtic. But there will be occasions where a decision within the Scottish game should be covered. And yesterday was one such occasion. Malky Mackay, I thought, done pretty well to keep his cool after the game. He was obviously raging at that decision.
If I was in Malky Mackay's shoes, I probably would have been channeling my inner Neil Lennon, chasing someone down the tunnel and grabbing them by the throat. Like, I have no idea how he kept his cool the way he did. That was an atrocious decision, absolutely disgusting refereeing, and yeah, pathetic.
Yeah, it was really poor. And hopefully we don't have a conversation at the end of this game about a poor refereeing decision. I'll keep the comments coming in whilst we run through both teams. Magnet 67, interesting that Jens drops out for Starfelt. Our strength in depth is beginning to show. Absolutely agree with that. Jungle Line, great to see you. And it's a hello from Dublin from yourself. Monty is feeling very confident today. Dundee United 1, Celtic 7. Would love to see it. It takes us on to the opposition before we come back to the Celtic chat. A terrible start, really, to the new season. I looked at Dundee United's performance under Tam Courts, and I was pretty surprised that he left when he did, because it looked as though, he could have continued to develop and progress at Dundee United. They bring in Jack Ross, who I think in some quarters of Scottish football still has a very good reputation. I thought he'd done pretty well at Hibs, probably prematurely was removed from his position. He's come in at Dundee United and he's not won a game yet, Jared. I mean, they have got off to a stinking start, haven't they?
Yeah, the thing with Jack Ross's teams is that he's the sort of manager, like I rated him when he was at St Mirren, but he's just you watch Sunderland Till I Die on Netflix, you watch him at Hibs, you watch him here, and it's all that one. It's pretty average. It's like they're happy for a 1-0. And to me, it's like, I don't know. I just don't really rate him too much. And, there you go, seeing the lineup. It's a bit shocking that the two Aussies and Mulgrew are on the bench. There you go. Birigidi, who should be in goals from his unbelievable goalkeeper. One of the most mad goalkeepers I've seen in my life. Absolutely insane. And then Baich, as I spoke about earlier, well, maybe they put him on the bench so people don't get in behind him. But the rest of their squad, not too worried about them, but they should be doing better than they are.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, I sometimes look at managers that come in and they do rely a wee bit on experience. Obviously, Dundee United brought in Fletcher, who had been, he's a player that Celtic had been linked with so many times in the past. He's in the twilight of his career now. A couple of ex-Celts on the bench, and Charlie Mulgrew and Tony Watt as well. The best thing about that starting 11 is the pitch in the background. That is a cracking Dundee United strip. And I'm hoping I'm not underestimating them too much, Liam. Am I giving them enough respect today?
Yeah, I think you should always be cautious when you're going to Tannadice, because it is not an easy place to go. But this is at Dundee United, the weakest I've seen them for quite a while. Certainly since they came back up. And I think I don't think we should be overly concerned about today. Obviously, you always give the opposition respect, but no, I don't see anything in that team that really should worry us too much.
I was always interested in the boy Harkes, because back in the day, Celtic had his dad, John Harkes, in on trial. And he ultimately signed for Sheffield Wednesday because Celtic refused to pay 90 grand for his services. And he went on to be something of a... it was certainly a success at Sheffield Wednesday and for the American national side. So every time I see the name Harkes, and obviously with the women's team last season, Harkes, his wife, played for us, I always think back to that, the penny pinching, 90 grand, and we would have had an American internationalist, and we said no.
At about the same time, how much did we pay for Gary Gillespie and Stuart Slater?
Oh no, absolutely yes. There were a few. There was a few others as well. I do remember the picture of Brad Friedel, who had come in as a trialist, and he was being coached by Joe Corrigan, I think it was. And the Celtic goalies were Gordon Marshall, Pat Bonner, and Shay Given. So we got rid of Brad Friedel and Shay Given, kept Marshall and Bonner, and the rest is history. When we're looking, obviously, at this week, over the last couple of days, in fact, there's been some movement in the transfer market. There is a bit of a revolving door at Celtic Park at the moment, and I think there will still be more moves. Chris Julian has gone. He's left the building, and we've got a new arrival in Haksabanovic, who I was talking last night just about this player, and the fact that I'm quite excited about him, Jared. He was something of a prodigy, making his debut at 15 in the Swedish top division. Got a big move to West Ham, didn't work out. Big move to Ruben Kazan, actually, $5.5 million just 12 months ago. I think to get the player at that price has been something of a coup for Celtic, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him again. Is it all about options up top with Haksabanovic?
I love the signing. From what I've seen and what I've heard, it's a guy. We've been bringing people in, basically not just to strengthen the starting 11, as we said earlier, it's a squad game, but this is a guy that, if he's not going to be starting straight away, he's going to be around the mix, and he's going to give Jota competition for his spot. I'm not saying whether that means Jota goes the other side. You've got Maeda. He can play in the 10. So bringing him in is great. I'm happy for him to be there. I think it's a perfect move for us at a perfect time. But at the same time, the cynic in me goes, "Oh, we're coming towards the end of the window. What's the board gonna do? Who are they gonna ship off?" And that's
Right.
just the one thing that's worried. Like, is it the end of the road for Mikey Johnson? Okay, if it is, he hasn't done much. Is it the end of the road for Forrest? Who knows? There's a whole bunch of variables here. The talk is that Owen Moffat's gone out to Blackpool.
Mm.
Well, that's disappointing if that happens. For me, I rate the kid. So I don't know. As long as we don't lose Rocco Vada, I suppose we're good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, and it does lead on to any potential moves in and out between now and the end of the transfer window. And I think that there is always, for myself, a bit of an air of concern and anxiety. And we've heard rumours around players like Juranovic, Yakimakis, and Matt O'Reilly. You know, guys who are first team players who potentially would be in your strongest 11. Yakimakis drops out today. I get a wee bit concerned when I see that, Liam, at this time of the year. Players like Mikey Johnston, I would expect him to leave, perhaps not permanently. Owen Moffat, you wonder about his development because he was playing some first team football last season, hasn't featured this season. And Jamesy Forrest, he was given an extension to his contract, but he's barely played really this season. And when you see a lot of the offensive type players, Liam, coming in, you know, you do start wondering about players like Forrest and also James McCarthy. You know, I know he's on the bench today, but these guys are out the picture now. I think if you lose a player like Julian and you bring in Haksabanovic, I know they're different positions, but you're losing someone who wasn't contributing. And you're bringing someone in who's going to be pushing for a jersey, and it just makes the squad stronger and stronger. Are you expecting many more players in, and who do you think's going to leave, Liam?
I think a couple more in possibly, but I think more going out than coming in because, like you say, I don't think there's room at the moment for Forrest, Johnson, and Haksabanovic now that we've signed him. So one of Forrest or Johnson is going, I think, probably on loan for a season if it was Johnson. If it was Forrest, it could be a perm. I mean, something my dad brought up last night when I was talking to him actually, and this is a fair point I think, is James Forrest's new contract could be a Stelian Petrov type scenario, where if you remember we gave him a longer term contract, but then we sold him a few months later and it ensured we got the big fee for him from Aston Villa.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a similar case with Forrest that he is thinking to maybe move on, but he wants to make sure Celtic get money for him, you know.
I mean, if that was the case, I've got to say I've kind of championed James Forrest, and I was one of those that thought he should stay to have that continuity with the experienced kind of core of the group. But then he's gone on and barely played. So if he was to move on, I think I would be a wee bit surprised. But I understand your logic there, Liam, and he is obviously a Celtic man through and through, a Celtic man at heart. I was hoping he was going to contribute this season. I'm not so sure if he is. I'll ask you just before we wrap up for the game, Jared, what about yourself? Do you have any concerns about Yakimakis, Juranovic or O'Reilly, perhaps, leaving in the final hours of this window?
Probably the only one I'd be considering would be Juranovic for the simple fact that we've got Ralston behind him. So we won't lose too much in terms of who jumps in there. But I don't want to see that happen. I think he's got to hang around for another year, especially with the World Cup coming up as well. I can't really see him moving. Last minute transfer window, making a move, going to Chelsea, for instance, where he was linked, and being the third string right back there. I can't see how that move would make sense to him when the World Cup's in 3 or 4 months. Makes actually a couple of months, yeah. So it makes zero sense for him to make that move, and it makes zero sense for us to sell him. If he goes to the World Cup, does well, he does well in the Champions League before that, puts himself in the shop window, instead of the rumours of getting 25 million, 30 million for him, then his prices goes up as well. So it's even better for us. So we've got to be smart about it. We've got to play the long game. He's got a long-term contract there. I think the key will be more getting a Yeti out of the club, get him off the payroll, whether it's on loan or whether it's through a permanent and just cutting our losses. I want him out the door. And then if he goes out, then it opens up the way just to potentially bring in that number 6 we've been talking about, another central midfielder. That's the only incoming I could possibly see, but I think it's going to still a bunch of variables there before that happens.
Yeah, and I'm going to say I think the club have done really well to move on players like Bolingoli and Sorrow and Barkas, Julien, and if we're able to get a Jetty out the door as well, I think it's been a fantastic bit of work by those who we are very quick to criticise from time to time. A couple of last minute comments. Jungle Lion, is it too early for a beer?
Not if you're over here.
Why not? It's all
Not
right.
here, it isn't.
Exactly. Jungle Lion, it's all right in Japan and Australia, so get on it and enjoy it as well. A couple of wee things. If you want to vote for a Celtic State of Mind at the FCAs this year, we are going for the best in video creators, and the link is underneath your video. We do enjoy putting a video together, so if you've enjoyed it, give us a wee vote, and hopefully we can bring a trophy back up from Manchester. I hope everybody enjoys the first half. We'll be back at half time. Thanks everybody in the comment section. Thank you also to Jared and Liam for joining me on a Celtic State